You ever walk into a room and realize everyone's laughing at a joke you didn't know you were part of? That was me. At my company Christmas party. Music blasting, lights flashing, fake smiles everywhere, until one message popped up on the big screen. My boyfriend's name, my coworker's phone, and the kind of betrayal you only see in movies. But guess what? I didn't cry. I hit play. And that's when the real show started. My name is Layla. I'm 32 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The room still smells like sugar and cinnamon when I think about it. The company Christmas party had that strange mix of glitter and exhaustion. Everyone pretending the year hadn't crushed them, holding drinks like proof that they'd made it through. The HR team had outdone themselves. Twinkle lights traced every hallway, blinking against framed motivational quotes that no one believed in anymore. The tables were dressed with candy cane centerpieces. The eggnog was real this time, not that non-alcoholic nonsense from last year. Someone had even rented a photo booth. You could hear the plastic curtains slap shut every few minutes, followed by the laughter of people who, come morning, would forget each other's names again. The music was too loud for a Monday, but that was the point. Drown the week, drown the worry. Even the VPs were taking shots with interns, the walls between floors melting with every toast. I'd told myself I'd only stay an hour, just enough to smile, shake hands, remind everyone that operations ran smoothly because someone cared about the numbers more than the selfies. I remember standing near the dessert table holding a gingerbread cookie shaped like a little man with one leg broken. The frosting stuck to my fingers. I was trying to decide between another brownie or just leaving when someone shouted for a group photo. I turned toward the noise, and then the big screen flickered. That screen wasn't just decoration. It was the 72-inch smart display we used for weekly huddles, finance updates, all those sterile PowerPoints. Seeing it glow blue in the corner of my eye felt off, like the start of a glitch in real life. Then a notification popped up. Team's message. Another. A third. The rhythm of it cut through the music like static. The screen auto-synced to a device. Not mine. A personal chat window appeared. For a second, no one really noticed, too busy posing with candy cane props. But then the text grew large enough for everyone nearby to read. A short message. Just one line. Can't wait for later tonight. The crowd noise thinned. I thought it was a joke, some meme thread opened by mistake. Then the next message appeared. She'll be too drunk to notice. My throat closed. I didn't even breathe. The names were right there. Jason and Marla. Jason, my boyfriend. Marla from HR, the same woman who had spent all week asking me about vacation policy. The cursor blinked once, then another message slid up. Meet me in the storage room in 10. The air in the room shifted, like the oxygen had been pulled out. The motion sensors dimmed the overhead lights just enough to make faces harder to read. The Christmas song kept playing, but softer now, almost mocking. A few people laughed nervously, not sure what they were witnessing. Someone whispered, "Wait, is this real?" Jason stood near the bar in the red sweater I'd bought him last year, a whiskey glass half tilted in his hand. He looked frozen mid-gesture, the kind of stillness that happens when panic tries to disguise itself as confusion. Marla's smile cracked. The candy cane she'd been twirling hit the floor and rolled under a table. I didn't move, didn't cry, didn't even blink. My hand felt cold around the cookie like I was holding ice instead of sugar. Every second stretched thin. I could hear someone's laugh fade out, replaced by the buzz of the heater. Then Jason turned his head and found my eyes. The distance between us might as well have been a mile. I could read the denial forming in his stare, the plea that if he just stood still enough, time would rewind. It didn't. I reached for the remote on the nearest desk and pressed the button. The music stopped mid-chorus. Silence dropped over the room like snow. My voice came out steady, almost calm. "Since we're sharing things tonight," I said, "let's share everything." Every head turned. Some people thought it was part of the entertainment. But I already had my phone out. I'd mirrored it to the TV earlier that afternoon. Habit, maybe instinct. Not because I knew this would happen, but because somewhere deep down I'd started preparing for the possibility that truth might need a stage. The screen changed again. The chat vanished, replaced by a folder icon glowing white against the dark background. The title read, "For HR and Jason. Merry Christmas." A ripple of uneasy laughter tried to start and died before it could. The room went still. I tapped the first file. A screenshot filled the screen, time-stamped 2 months ago. Jason's chat with Marla, his words. "She's so obsessed with work, she wouldn't notice a brick missing from her life." My heart beat so loud I could feel it in my ears. Still, I kept my tone even. Next file. A short video clip from the break room camera. His hand on her waist, her leaning close, both laughing in that careless way people do when they think no one is watching. The quality was grainy, but the intent was clear. I let it play. No commentary, no dramatics. The sound of ice melting in glasses filled the gaps. By the third file, a spreadsheet showing Jason's overtime hours, all approved by Marla, the whispers had turned to low gasps. Someone near the bar muttered, "Oh my God." Another voice said, "She's been collecting this for months." Jason stepped forward, hand raised like he could stop the momentum. "Layla, wait." "No," I said quietly. "You waited." I prepared. His face crumpled a little, confusion tangled with guilt. Marla turned away completely, staring at the floor. Her red lipstick looked too bright under the harsh glow of the display. I zoomed in on the document. Fake signatures, falsified approvals, dates that matched those overtime nights. Then the emails. A trail so neat even an intern could follow it. And just in case anyone still doubted, the last file opened. A short security cam clip of the two of them leaving the office together past midnight, laughing as they disappeared into the elevator. No narration. Just the hum of the TV and the muffled sound of someone setting down a drink. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then someone near the dessert table whispered, "She really did her homework." I stood there, still holding the gingerbread cookie. The frosting had smudged on my palm. My voice stayed low, even. "Merry Christmas." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of the weight of every choice they'd made and every file I'd saved. I felt calm in a way that scared me a little, not angry, just clear. Jason took a step closer, his voice cracking. "We can talk about this. Not here." "Here is perfect," I said. "This is where you built it. You wanted the spotlight, Jason. Now you have it." He looked around, searching for sympathy, but the crowd had already decided to stay quiet. The same co-workers who had once congratulated us on our anniversary now studied the floor tiles, pretending to check their phones. The playlist had stopped long ago, but the echo of the music still lived in the walls. I thought about how strange it was that a single tap could unravel a whole version of your life. And I realized the moment wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. The screen behind me dimmed to black. Someone finally coughed, nervous, and the spell broke. People started to drift toward the exits, murmuring apologies they didn't owe. I didn't move yet. I wanted the image to settle in their memories, the cookie in my hand, the TV glow fading behind me, Jason's face caught somewhere between disbelief and regret. When I finally turned to leave, my reflection appeared for a second in the dark screen. I barely recognized the calm in my own eyes. It wasn't triumph exactly, more like recognition, the end of pretending. No one knew what to say. The music had stopped long ago, and the hum of the vending machine at the end of the hallway filled the space like a clock counting down to something none of us could name. A balloon popped somewhere behind the dessert table, and half the room jumped as if sound itself had become a threat. I stood there, watching them both shrink. Jason's mouth opened once, twice, each time searching for a line that might save him. Nothing came out. Marla didn't even try. She just reached for her purse, all business until I spoke. "You might want to stay. HR will be reviewing this, and I want to make sure you're both present." Her eyes flinched, barely, but enough. Jason looked at her, then at me, the color draining from his face. "Layla, come on, this isn't the place. Let's talk. Oh, this is exactly the place. My voice sounded too calm, like it belonged to someone else. The projector cast pale shadows behind them, stretching their shapes across the wall until they looked smaller than I remembered. Sweat had begun to darken the collar of Jason's red sweater. Marla's phone screen kept lighting up, probably texts from someone outside telling her to leave. But the doors stayed closed. No one moved. They wanted to see. Not because they were cruel, but because people always want proof that lies can be undone. I wasn't just a girlfriend catching a cheater. This was about integrity, about the quiet rot behind the company's glass smile. I opened the next file, a screen recording. The audio crackled through the speakers, and I felt the temperature in the room drop. Jason's voice. If she finds out, we'll say it was a misunderstanding. You're HR. Just file something to protect us. Marla answered low and careless. She won't. She's too busy saving the damn team. A man in the back muttered, "Holy hell." A woman near the bar whispered, "Is that even legal?" The words floated like smoke and then dissolved. Jason stepped forward, desperate. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Are you denying it?" I asked. He didn't. Marla's face had turned blotchy, mascara softening at the corners of her eyes. I let the files run until the end, every word echoing off the glass walls that once made the office look so transparent. When it was done, I took a printed email from my purse and held it up. "This," I said, "is the message I sent to Regional HR earlier today, all attachments included." I walked to the nearest desk, pulled out the USPS-certified mail receipt, and set it down hard enough for everyone to hear the slap. "Tracking number, confirmation of delivery, sent to the ethics board and legal." Silence again. Not awkward, but final. Jason's expression folded in on itself. Part fear, part realization. He understood it wasn't just exposure, it was structure. I'd spent months building this moment while smiling beside him at morning meetings. I'd already removed my name from our lease. I'd already separated my 401k. Everything that could tie me to him had been undone quietly, one form at a time. He reached out, a pathetic reflex, like maybe kindness could rewind what evidence couldn't. I shook my head. "Don't. Every time you smiled at me, you were lying. This is me smiling back." The words hung between us until a new voice broke through. "Layla." Gina, from compliance, stepped forward, her badge catching the light. She didn't look surprised, just steady, composed, like someone who'd been waiting for this shoe to drop. "Marla, I'm going to need you to come with me. Jason, please stay where you are." Jason tried to bluster. "Wait, this is insane. We were just—" "Jason!" That was all she said, his name clipped clean. He stopped. Marla finally spoke, her voice a cracked whisper. "You planned this." "No," I said. "You did. I just hit play." The crowd parted as Gina guided them toward the door. Nobody said a word. The twinkle lights blinked in slow rhythm, reflecting off the floor like the aftermath of a storm. I stood still, letting the weight of what had just happened settle into every corner of that over-decorated room. On the table beside me lay the cookie I'd dropped earlier. I picked it up, took a small bite. Stale, perfectly fitting. I set it back down and walked out. Gina caught up with me near the elevators. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with an expression that mixed shock with respect. Finally, she asked, "You okay?" "I will be," I said. She nodded once. "If you need anything, legal files, internal statements, it's yours." I returned the nod. There was no need for comfort, just acknowledgement. Two women who understood how the system worked, how sometimes justice came dressed in silence. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped inside, turned toward her. "Thank you." She didn't answer, but her eyes said enough. The doors slid shut, cutting off the noise, the whispers, the blinking lights. For the first time in an hour, I exhaled. The air tasted clean. I didn't go home that night. Not to our home, anyway. I'd already moved half my things to a short-term rental near downtown Nashville, a one-bedroom perched above a coffee shop that never seemed to close. The floors creaked, the windows leaked streetlight and sound, but the quiet there felt honest. It smelled of espresso and rain. I sat on the floor that night with my back against the wall, still wearing the black dress from the party. Glitter clung to the hem, catching the glow of a single lamp like dust from another world. My phone buzzed on the counter. Once, twice, 7 times in total. Jason's name. Then Jason again. Then a number that hid behind no caller ID. I stared until the screen went dark, then blocked them all. One by one, clean, final. I poured myself a glass of ginger beer, the bubbles hissing in the silence, and stared at the ceiling. That was when I cried. Not because I missed him, but because I didn't. The tears came quiet and steady, a slow release of everything I had carried through months of suspicion and denial. I thought of the picture I'd painted for us. Rings, maybe kids, a house somewhere near the edge of the city where the neighbors waved on Sundays. 2 golden retrievers, a freezer full of Costco pizza, a life that sounded normal when you said it out loud. He never helped paint it. He just stood inside the frame, smiling for the parts that looked good on social media. I cried for the years I lost believing the story, for the holidays I spent alone while he worked late, for the rent I covered when he was between ideas. But not for him. Never again for him. When morning crept through the blinds, I called my mother. My voice cracked once while telling her everything. She was quiet long enough that I thought the line had dropped, and then she said, "Well, baby, I guess it's time you start making room for something real." It didn't fix anything, but it reminded me that broken isn't the same as finished. Back at work, the air felt different. Marla was on leave pending investigation. Jason's contract had been flagged. The hallways that once echoed with chatter now hummed with restraint. People offered careful smiles. Some couldn't meet my eyes. The ones who did looked at me like I was walking proof that truth still had teeth. Gina brought me coffee every morning that week. No note, no small talk, just the cup placed gently beside my keyboard. It was enough. The following Monday, after our team meeting, my manager called me aside. "If you ever want to talk about next steps," he said, "I think leadership should be on the table." I nodded, not out of ambition, but because I'd already made a promise to myself. I would never shrink again to make other people comfortable. Rebuilding wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace, the kind that comes when you stop apologizing for taking up space. The silence that followed felt like recovery. No more pretending, no more excuses written in someone else's handwriting. I threw myself into the work that mattered. Extra projects, process fixes, the things everyone else avoided. Not because I had something to prove, but because focus felt like oxygen again. During lunch breaks, I sometimes ate alone, sometimes with Gina or a few quiet coworkers who didn't ask for the story. We shared fries, scrolled through TikToks, laughed about nothing important. Each laugh loosened something inside me that had been locked for too long. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in small proofs, like the first night I went home and didn't think about checking my phone, like realizing I could fall asleep without rehearsing what I'd say if he ever tried to apologize. 2 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, an internal email hit the inbox. Jason was released from contract obligations. Marla voluntarily resigned. No announcement meeting, no whispers in the hall, just the quiet efficiency of removal. The office moved on the way offices always do. New projects, new gossip. But the memory lingered. Not of the scandal itself, people forget details, but of the shift that came after. The way others started speaking up more in meetings. The way the younger interns began to believe that maybe integrity still had a seat at the table. When I walked in Monday morning, someone had taped a small paper crown to my monitor. Marker lines, shaky but bold. Queen of Receipts. I laughed out loud, the sound bouncing off the cubicle walls. I left it there. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That truth can cost you everything and still be worth it. That sometimes power doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go cleanly, completely, and walking away with your head high. The strange thing about silence is how loud it gets when you finally make peace with it. It hums under your skin, echoes through the empty corners of your apartment, fills the spaces where noise used to live. At first, it felt unfamiliar, like waking up in someone else's house. Then, slowly, it began to sound like home. There were mornings I woke up and reached for my phone before my brain caught up to my hands, half expecting a text, a meme he thought was funny, an apology he'd never mean. But the screen stayed blank, no notifications, no half-truths disguised as morning charm, and that nothingness started to feel like freedom. By the second week, I stopped sleeping with my phone next to the bed. I let it charge in the kitchen, far enough away that I couldn't reach it in the dark. The silence when I woke became its own kind of reassurance, a reminder that peace doesn't always arrive gently, but it always arrives. It was a Wednesday when the call came. I was at my desk, reviewing budget reports, when the phone buzzed with an internal number I didn't recognize. Legal wanted a check-in, not a meeting, just a few questions. A formal follow-up, they called it, for the internal audit. The voice on the other end was calm, almost apologetic. "Would you be open to giving a statement?" the representative asked. I paused. "You want me to relive it?" "Only if you're ready," she said. "But your documentation, it's airtight. We just want to make sure your account aligns with the records." There was something oddly freeing about that word. Records. Evidence. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it, that my patience hadn't been paranoia. I agreed. Not because I wanted revenge. I already had that in the form of closure, but because I knew how people like Jason and Marla operated. They didn't just cross lines, they built careers on the ashes of the ones they burned. So I gathered everything again: dates, times, screenshots, the phone sync logs that tied their messages to their work accounts, the chain of custody forms for the break room footage. I sat at my kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee and went through every file with steady hands. There was no shaking, no adrenaline, just calm precision. When I finally handed the folder over, I felt lighter, not triumphant, just done. A few days later, an email arrived with a subject line that made me laugh. Recognition nomination, Internal Values Award. For a moment, I thought it was spam, but curiosity won. I opened it and read every word twice. It was real. Gina had nominated me. The description was formal, almost clinical. Integrity, leadership, and ethical action under pressure. But at the bottom, she'd added one line of her own. She didn't burn the building down. She just opened the windows. That's when I cried. Not at my desk, not in front of anyone, in my car. Outside a Walgreens parked between a delivery truck and a minivan. The tears came quiet, clean. Because when you've spent months feeling invisible, even the smallest recognition feels like sunlight through heavy blinds. 2 weeks before New Year's, the company hosted its quarterly town hall. A fresh start, they called it. Jason and Marla's names never came up, but people knew. Their absence hung in the room like the ghost of bad weather. When the VP started speaking about rising above unethical behavior and protecting the integrity of our culture, I felt dozens of eyes flicker toward me. I didn't look away, didn't smile either. I just sat still, grounded in my chair, breathing evenly. The quiet strength of it surprised me. Later that afternoon, as people filed out, the CEO stopped me in the hallway. He was older than I remembered, lines etched deeper around his eyes. "You handled that storm with grace," he said. "I hope we've earned your trust back." I met his gaze. "Not yet," I said softly. "But you're on the right track." He nodded. Didn't argue, didn't try to spin it into a speech, just accepted it. Sometimes that's all respect really is. Someone hearing your truth and not trying to edit it. At home, I started redecorating. Nothing dramatic, just small acts of reclamation. A new bedspread, crisp and white. New curtains that caught the light in the mornings. I changed my Wi-Fi password. Cleared old playlists full of songs that used to belong to us. It wasn't about erasing him. It was about reclaiming the space he'd once filled with noise. I even started something new, an Etsy shop. I named it Screenproof. It began as a joke, a way to turn what had broken me into something creative. I designed hand-lettered prints, quotes about truth, resilience, and quiet strength. The first one I sold read, "She smiled like I was the joke." I made sure I was the punchline instead. I packaged it carefully, slipped in a handwritten note that said, For anyone who's ever been underestimated. The notifications for orders were few at first, then more frequent. People liked the simplicity, the honesty. It felt good, creating something that wasn't tied to anyone else's chaos. I didn't post about the party, didn't tweet screenshots, didn't hint at what happened, because power doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't shout across the room demanding validation. It sits quietly, patient, steady, knowing the truth speaks loud enough on its own. That was the lesson they never understood. They thought silence was weakness, that if I wasn't fighting, I was losing. But my silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy, a kind of strength that didn't need to announce itself. And for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like music. The new year came quietly. No fireworks, no countdown, no noise. Just me on the couch, wearing fleece socks and a blanket that smelled faintly of detergent and ginger tea. I watched the clock turn midnight without ceremony, without promises to be better or stronger. I didn't need resolutions. I was already someone new. The tea was oversteeped, a little bitter, but it suited the moment. Because sometimes the loudest victories are the ones nobody sees. The kind you don't post about or wrap in glitter. The kind that simply exist. Quietly, completely, without needing applause. But people did see in small ways. Not through gossip or headlines, but in the way they spoke to me now. Carefully, respectfully, like they'd learned something from watching. Their eyes carried a quiet kind of awe that no one tried to hide. I wasn't a hero. I hadn't saved the world. I'd just refused to be fooled twice. 2 months later, I was invited, not summoned, to the boardroom. The word mattered. Summoned was what used to happen before the storm. Invited was something else. It meant they saw me. The room smelled faintly of coffee and whiteboard markers. The executives were already seated when I walked in, their expressions composed but not cold. The head of legal smiled first, a small nod that told me this was a meeting, not an interrogation. "Layla," she said, "we'd like to offer you a new role. Senior Strategy Advisor. More pay, more control, less tolerance for people like Marla." I let the words settle before I answered. "I'll accept," I said finally, "on one condition." The air shifted. Someone clicked their pen nervously. "What's that?" "I want hiring committee oversight, final eyes on all HR decisions." A pause. A few exchanged glances. Then the head of HR, new, not Marla, spoke softly. "You've earned that." That was it. No ceremony, no handshake photo, just quiet agreement. And in that quiet, I realized something. I'd rewritten the room. Jason never reached out again. Not directly, but one morning an email slipped through from a new address. No subject line, just a single sentence signed with a J. "I miss who we were." I read it twice, then once more out of old habit. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just distance, the kind that comes from growing out of something you once mistook for safety. I didn't miss who we were. I missed who I was before I started dimming myself to fit inside his shadow. I deleted the message, then opened the trash folder and deleted it again. Permanently. 3 months after the party, I ran into someone from accounting in the elevator. She smiled, a little shyly. "You know," she said, "people still talk about that night." I smiled back. "They should. It was the only honest party we ever had." She laughed, covering her mouth, but her eyes told a deeper story. Gratitude, not just for the spectacle, but for proof that it was possible to go through fire and come out made of something stronger. By fall, I was ready to move on. Not out of bitterness. Bitterness ties you down. I left because I was ready for more space, more light, more life that belonged only to me. When I turned in my badge, Gina met me in the lobby. For the first time since I'd known her, she hugged me. Not a polite pat on the shoulder, but a full embrace, the kind that says you did it. Her voice was soft against my ear. "You made this place better," she said, "even if it didn't deserve you." I smiled. I made myself better. That's what matters. And with that, I walked out the front doors. No applause, no music, Just the sound of leaves crunching under my boots, the wind curling around the corners of the building like a sigh of relief. The parking lot was half empty. The sky stretched wide and pale, the kind of Tennessee blue that promises nothing and everything all at once. I stood there for a minute, breathing in the cold, the quiet, the peace. God, the peace. That's how it ends. Not with fireworks, but with calm. Not with revenge, but with clarity. They thought they owned the room. They thought they controlled the story. They thought I'd fall apart. But I used their arrogance as my megaphone. Their messages lit up the Christmas party, so I used the same screen to end their lies. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.